Long before the world mapped itself onto the stars or the truths of reason, there was a city, Alexandria, in which sand, sea, and scrolls shaped destiny. Here in the 5th century, culture, faith, and intellect flow as freely as Nile water, but beneath it all runs a fierce, unseen tension. In these tangled boulevards, where philosophers teach by sunlight and mobs sometimes judge by moonlight, our story finds its heart. Today, echoes through time, brings you face to face with the last daughter of Greek science, an advisor to governors, a challenger of beliefs, Hypatia of Alexandria. Hers is a life built beside candles and compasses, lived out beneath both adoration and danger. We will discover a world where mathematics could save a life and teaching could end it. We'll ask, how did a philosopher become a symbol for learning and a target for fear? In March 415, as the city totters between faiths and factions, Leo, our eternally curious traveler, finds himself on a journey through Alexandria's sun-streaked porticos to meet the woman whose wisdom illuminated an age and whose violent end would haunt history forever. It is midday in Alexandria, and the city thrums with restless brilliance. The marketplace bustles, olive oil and incense perfuming the breeze as students parade new ideas like medals. Beyond the chaos, a marble courtyarded house stands, a scholar sanctuary adorned only by an owl-shaped door knocker, evoking both wisdom and the silent night. Approaching the threshold, Leo hesitates, feet gritty with Alexandrian dust, mind racing with anticipation and snippets of Platonic logic. He's traveled centuries to meet Hypatia, but now, on the cusp, he wonders if a single woman can really bridge a world teetering between memory and flame.
Excuse me, is this Hypatia's house? I hope I'm not late. 2 different water sellers argued about the price of figs, and I got thoroughly sidetracked.
Then you have arrived precisely on time. There is a lesson in every detour, especially in Alexandria, where a price dispute yields more insights than half the books in Rome. Be welcome, traveler. I am Hypatia.
It's a real privilege. I don't really have the words. If I may, do you truly teach anyone who asks, even strangers from odd places?
Anyone who bears questions may find a place here, so long as they leave behind prejudice. The city thrives on inquiry, some formal, some unruly. Knowledge, like water, is best unconfined.
Honestly, that might be the least intimidating thing I've heard in a while. Where I come from, scholars can be a little territorial. What drew you to become a teacher, especially here now?
My lineage dictated much. My father, Theon, taught mathematics and astronomy at the Mausion. He believed that the intellect, regardless of gender, was sacred. He meant for me to be neither cloistered nor idle. In truth, I grew to love teaching more than learning itself. A lesson only lives when shared.
I read that your father tutored you in everything from geometry to philosophy, almost making you into a perfect philosopher. That's a lot of pressure. Was he strict?
Strict, yes, but fair. From early on, my education was rigorous, engaging with Euclid, Ptolemy, even the poetry of Sappho. He insisted I rode the city's canals and ran the streets, so mind and body might be tempered both. Alexandria expects strength from all its children.
That sounds like comprehensive training. Did you surpass your father's expectations? Or did you always feel you were walking in his shadow?
He often said I possessed greater genius than his own, though perhaps that was a father's fond bias. I mastered all he taught, then ventured where he had not, into philosophy proper, into the mysteries of the One. He excelled at mathematics. I married mathematics to the search for divine truth.
Did you feel like you had to prove yourself twice over, being a woman among all these men? Sometimes even more than your own father?
At times, yes. There are men less willing to accept wisdom from one who wears a tribon, let alone a woman's face. I meet such doubts directly, with reason and restraint. The city itself, for many years, was surprisingly indifferent. If you could solve Diophantus's puzzles or track the rising of Sirius, you earned your place, at least among those who mattered.
Speaking of the tribone, that philosopher's cloak, was that a deliberate choice to signal your authority? I imagine some people had opinions about a woman wearing it.
Very much deliberate. The tribon announces, "Here stands one devoted to wisdom." Some whisper that it ill becomes a woman, but fashion serves prejudice, not truth. When I walk through the agora, cloak flowing, students following, skeptics must at least acknowledge that philosophy has found a voice.
That sounds ideal. But, forgive me, Alexandria feels tense. The air kind of crackles. How do you keep teaching during such down times, with faith competing against faith and tempers so easily stoked?
One must persist quietly but publicly. I hold lectures not in secluded halls, but in the open street, sometimes stepping into assemblies of men, sometimes inviting students to walk as we debate. The tumult of the agora is itself an education. I cannot pause for every wind of intrigue, or I would teach nothing at all.
So your classrooms are literally the open air? I'd have loved that as a student, if a little less so back home in February.
Our climate is merciful. Alexandria spares us mostly from rain and hardship. Our difficulties come instead from men's hearts. Often I open lessons in the colonnade of the Caesareum, sometimes even in this courtyard. Some of my fondest discussions began as arguments beneath the plane trees there, students and senators crowding close, eager for philosophia.
Can you paint me a picture of a typical day? When do you wake? How do you structure your teaching?
I rise before dawn, when the city is still quiet, to read and reflect. By sunrise, students begin arriving, some with scrolls, others with questions that kept them wakeful. Mornings often begin with mathematics, Euclid's propositions, or Ptolemy's star tables. Afternoons turn to philosophy, Plato's dialogues, discussions of the good, the nature of the soul.
Do you have a particular teaching method, or does it vary by student?
Each mind is different. Some learn through rigorous proof, others through analogy and story. I might begin with a geometric problem, then ask, what does this triangle teach us about the soul's ascent to the divine? For the practical-minded, I show how mathematics serves navigation or architecture. For the philosophical, I reveal how numbers echo the cosmic order.
What's it like, having such a range of students? I heard Synesius of Cyrene came here just for you. Did all your students show the same devotion?
Synesius was exceptional, both in devotion and temperament. He wrote to me often, even after he left to become a bishop. To the philosopher, he began every letter, as if no other name were necessary. My other students ranged from firebrand pagans to earnest Christian priests. My duty is to each, as far as they are honest in their pursuit.
Tell me more about Synesius. What was he like as a person? I know he became a bishop, but he clearly never forgot you.
Ah, Synesius, brilliant but restless, prone to melancholy yet capable of great joy. He struggled with life's contradictions, how to be both Christian and philosopher, both contemplative and engaged in worldly affairs. When his children died, he wrote to me in anguish, seeking comfort in philosophical apatheia. He called me mother, sister, teacher, as if I might fill every role his heart needed.
That's touching. Did you ever worry that your influence on Christian students might cause them trouble with their own religious authorities?
Constantly. I warned them to be circumspect, to present our discussions as purely philosophical, not as challenges to faith. Yet wisdom often transcends such boundaries. Many found that Plotinus's vision of the one complemented their Christian theology rather than contradicted it. Still, I knew that association with me carried risks.
Do you remember any particularly stubborn student, someone who truly tested your patience or your philosophy?
Many. There was a youth convinced that Aristotle could not err, not even in minor logic. I challenged him to find a method by which Aristotle could define a circle with only straight lines and compass. He returned days later, chastened but still unconvinced. Yet stubbornness too may mature into wisdom, if tempered.
And then there's that famous story about the lovesick student, the one involving a rather visceral lesson. Is that tale true?
You've heard that story? Yes, it happened. A young man became so infatuated he could barely concentrate on Euclid. Words failed to cure him, so I resorted to a more direct demonstration, showing him a cloth stained with my monthly blood. "This is what you love," I told him, "and it is not beautiful." The shock was immediate and complete.
That's certainly memorable pedagogy. Was that typical of your teaching style?
Not typical, but sometimes necessary. Philosophy demands we see past surfaces to reality beneath. That young man learned more in one moment than he might have from months of conventional instruction. Truth is not always pleasant, but it is always liberating.
Your teaching seems almost gentle, very Socratic, drawing people out by questioning rather than hammering home answers. Do you prepare lessons, or is it more spontaneous?
Preparation is the seed, debate the sunlight. I plan themes, on the good, on numbers, on the motions of planets, but the best insight comes from a student's unexpected question. My task is to nurture, not to dictate. As Plato said, education is the drawing out of something already present.
Speaking of plans, I read that you collaborated with your father to edit major scientific works. Ptolemy's Almagest, for instance. Did you contribute insights of your own, or was it mostly preservation?
I did both. In the case of Ptolemy's star tables, it was no simple task to keep the data accurate. I suggested a new tabular method for long division, making astronomical calculations more accessible to students. My father valued clarity, so did I. There is little virtue in knowledge you cannot share.
Can you walk me through what that mathematical innovation looked like? I imagine it was quite technical.
Indeed. When calculating planetary positions, one faces enormous division problems, numbers with many digits. I devised a way to arrange these calculations in columns, breaking complex divisions into simpler steps. What once took a trained astronomer hours could now be completed in minutes by any diligent student.
That sounds like it would have democratized astronomy somewhat, making it accessible to more people.
Precisely my intention. Knowledge hoarded serves no one. When I see a student master a technique that once seemed impossible, when they look up from their calculation with wonder in their eyes, that is worth more than any scholarly reputation.
Your commentary on Diophantus's Arithmetica lasted centuries. Some historians think your new problems only survive in Arabic, long after your lifetime. Did you ever imagine your words traveling so far?
It humbles one to be read by those whose names I will never know. The echo that travels furthest is often the softest spoken. I added new solutions, not out of vanity, but so others might climb where I had stumbled.
I wish my algebra professors had thought that way. There's a story about a hydrometer, something Synesius asked you to make by hand. Were you always interested in physical instruments?
Always. The astrolabe, the hydroscope, these are bridges between mind and world. Synesius wished for a hydrometer devised to his own illnesses. He trusted me more, perhaps, than his physicians. Science is, for me, a tool of healing and understanding both.
How do you go about making these instruments? Is it just you, or do you have craftsmen who help?
I work with skilled metalworkers and carpenters, but the design and calibration must be mine. For an astrolabe, I calculate the positions of stars, then instruct the craftsman how to engrave each mark. For the hydrometer, I must understand both the mathematics of fluid density and the practical needs of the user. My hands often bear the marks of brass and wood, a small price for bringing theory to life.
Did that ever get you in trouble, dabbling in instruments or machines? Later, people accused you of sorcery.
Accusations of sorcery are often leveled at those who understand what the superstitious do not. I did not hide my instruments. Science done in shadow serves only suspicion. Still, I confess, when some saw brass circles and mathematical diagrams, they imagined witchcraft. Fear is a powerful lens, Leo.
Have you faced those accusations directly? What's it like to be called a sorceress when you're simply doing mathematics?
More than once whispers have reached my ears. She speaks to the stars, they say. She commands demons through her brass circles. When such rumors arise, I make my calculations even more public, demonstrate that my magic is merely geometry and careful observation. Yet I know some minds prefer mystery to understanding.
Unfortunately, that's still true. Some people are threatened by what they can't understand. Was there a moment you realized your fame and your unorthodox position might be dangerous, even fatal?
I have sensed it more acutely of late. Alexandria is racked by rumor regarding my friendship with Orestes, my pagan beliefs, my supposed interference in civic peace. The breeze is thick with accusation. I am watched as much for what I say behind closed doors as in public lecture. But to shrink is to surrender the good I can do.
When did you first notice this shift in the atmosphere? Was it gradual, or did something specific happen?
The change began when Cyril assumed the bishopric 3 years ago. Where his uncle Theophilus was content to close temples, Cyril seeks to reshape minds. I felt eyes upon me more often, heard my words repeated in hostile whispers. The attack on Orestes by those desert monks was a warning. Violence now walks the streets in daylight.
Tell me about your relationship with Orestes, the prefect. How did you come to advise one of the most powerful men in Alexandria?
Orestes is a practical man, beset by impossible circumstances. He came first as student, then as friend. Over years, when policy entangled with religion and law, he sought my philosophical counsel. I provided advice on justice, on moderation, rarely on politics directly. He trusted me to be impartial, and I tried to live up to that trust, though it has cost me dearly.
What kind of advice did you give him? Can you share an example?
When the dispute arose over Jewish presence in the city, Orestes asked whether he should enforce Cyril's expulsion order. I counseled patience. That hasty action breeds lasting resentment. A prefect serves all citizens, I reminded him, not just the loudest. He tried to find middle ground, but in this climate, moderation itself becomes a provocation.
Did you ever hope you could help reconcile Orestes and Cyril? Or did it always seem impossible? The tension between church and state spinning out of control.
Once I believed dialogue might prevail, but too many in power benefit from division. My appeals to reason, my urging of patience, these could not overcome ambition and zealotry. I suppose I underestimated how quickly virtue can be drowned in suspicion.
Have you ever met Cyril personally? What's your sense of him as a man?
We have never spoken directly, though I suspect he knows much about me. From what I observe, he is learned and passionate, qualities I might admire in different circumstances. But his certainty troubles me. He sees the world in stark divisions, saved and damned, orthodox and heretical. Such thinking leaves little room for the questions that philosophy cherishes.
There's that whisper again in the air here. Fanaticism. Alexandria was a city of so many faiths, pagans, Christians, Jews. How did you maintain friendships across those lines, even as the city fractured?
I welcomed disagreement, so long as it remained civil. Many of my Christian pupils remained friends, even as they rose in church hierarchy. The pursuit of the one, the divine principle, unites more than divides, if people permit it. I performed pagan rites privately, but did not force them on students. Only when power demanded conformity did tolerance begin to unravel.
Can you tell me about your private religious practices? How do you worship as a Neoplatonist?
My worship is primarily contemplative, meditation on the one, the source from which all existence flows. I read the Chaldean oracles, study the mathematical harmonies that reveal divine order. Sometimes I offer incense to the old gods, not as separate beings, but as aspects of the single, ineffable good. My truest prayer is the pursuit of wisdom itself.
When the Serapeum's library fell in 391, did you lose hope for the future of classical learning? Did that change your approach to teaching?
It was a grievous loss. Teachers were scattered, libraries burned or plundered. I realized then the importance of private schools, homes where we could continue learning, at least quietly. My resolve strengthened. Knowledge must not perish with walls or courts, but must be sown in every willing mind.
What was lost when the Serapeum fell? What treasures of knowledge went up in smoke?
Irreplaceable commentaries, rare copies of scientific treatises, correspondence between scholars across the Mediterranean. But worse than the scrolls was the scattering of the community, the daily conversations, the shared pursuit of truth. A library is not merely books, it is the living tradition of inquiry. That tradition now survives only in places like this courtyard.
Do you ever worry about your students' safety? If someone like Synesius, a Christian bishop, sought your mentorship in these days, would it endanger him?
Perhaps. Some measure risk by association. But Synesius was deeply loyal, and others who attend my lectures accept the hazards. To limit learning out of fear is to let ignorance win. Still, when the mob rules, neither position nor piety guarantees protection.
Do you have any students who have surprised you? Someone you thought wouldn't become a philosopher but did?
A young woman, Olympias, came at first only out of family duty. She asked few questions, but watched, intensely. Months later, when her brother fell ill, it was Olympias who devised both the mathematical and medicinal regimen that returned him to health. Sometimes the quietest pupils bloom into the finest mentors.
Are there other women who come to your lectures? How do they fare in this environment?
A few, though they must be brave to venture here. Some come veiled, sitting at the back, careful not to draw attention. Others, like Olympias, eventually find their voices and join the debate. I try to create space where gender matters less than the quality of one's questions. But the world beyond these walls is less welcoming.
Were there ever women teachers before you in Alexandria, or do you feel entirely alone in that respect?
Few, if any, in recorded memory. Some whisper of women poets and orators in the past, but their names are sand in the wind. If I am first, I hope not to be last, not in this city, not beyond.
You've spoken about not marrying, choosing instead to wed philosophy. Was that decision difficult? Did your father wish for you to settle down, or did he understand?
He understood eventually. There were suitors, some even scholars themselves, but my passion for study left little space. I am content to be remembered as someone married to the mysteries of truth, not bound by household or hearth alone.
Did you ever feel lonely in that choice? Alexandria is such a social city.
Loneliness touches me sometimes, especially in quiet evenings when the last student has departed. But I am surrounded by minds that kindle mine, Synesius's letters, Olympias's questions, even the challenging arguments of those who disagree with me. In philosophy, one is never truly alone.
People still repeat a story where you showed a soiled rag to a student in love to teach him about reality versus ideal. Did you plan moments like that, to shock people out of illusion?
No plan, only necessity. The young man in question was impressed by surface beauty, forgetting the humors and frailties beneath. My gesture was direct, yes, but effective. Sometimes only blunt demonstration slices through delusion. The soul, after all, is what merits love. All else fades or stains.
Your humor shines through, and I can see students would feel both challenged and cared for. Did you have methods to help students handle loss or personal despair? Synesius once wrote about grieving for his child. Did you offer him comfort?
I listened and encouraged him toward apatheia, peace, untroubled by external passions or misfortune. But I did not scorn grief. Life is suffering. Philosophy teaches us not to banish feeling, but to guide it. I became, for Synesius, his counselor and friend, sometimes mother when need demanded.
How do you balance compassion with philosophical detachment? It seems like it would be a difficult line to walk.
Apatheia is not coldness, it is clarity. When Synesius wept for his children, I did not tell him to stop weeping. Instead, I helped him see that love itself is eternal, even when its objects pass away. The philosopher feels deeply, but is not enslaved by feeling.
Did you believe philosophy could heal in the way medicine does?
Very much so. Philosophy, when rightly pursued, is solace for the soul. Where no herb or ointment can cure, reason may still bring understanding and peace.
Were there ever topics you refused to discuss, even in front of important people, bishops, prefects? Were there limits to your teaching?
Only treachery and hatred, things antithetical to philosophy. I would not counsel how to harm, nor scheme for political favor. If asked about natural philosophy, virtue, the soul, I was open. On matters of force or dogma, I remained silent or redirected the conversation toward what might heal.
Have you ever been asked to use your influence for purposes you disagreed with?
More than once. Some sought my endorsement for harsh measures against Jews or pagans, thinking my friendship with Orestes might sway him. Others wanted me to publicly condemn Cyril, hoping to escalate the conflict. In both cases, I declined. A philosopher serves truth, not faction.
In these fraught times, do you ever regret not taking sides? Would it have been safer or more prudent to ally exclusively with the Church or with the old pagan order?
Safety is illusory, and partisanship corrodes the philosopher's purpose. My only alliance is to truth. True, this costs me security among zealots of both camps, but to act otherwise would betray every lesson I have offered my pupils.
Some Christians call you a witch. Some pagans accuse you of being too accommodating to Christians. Do you feel misunderstood in your own lifetime?
Misunderstanding is the tax in this city, paid by those who think or live outside its prescribed roles. I am glad for those few who judge me by my actions and reason, not by their fears. A teacher is often a mirror for others' anxieties.
Do you think there's something about being a woman in your position that makes people particularly uncomfortable?
Undoubtedly. A woman who teaches men, who advises magistrates, who walks unveiled through the city. This challenges assumptions about the natural order. Some find it easier to believe I practice sorcery than accept that a woman might master geometry through study alone.
Have you ever lost hope? Does the future worry you? Or do you have confidence learning will survive, even here?
I confess to dark nights, but hope clings stubbornly. Each time I see pupils quarrel, only to reconcile in laughter. Each time a student returns with a discovery I could not have made. Alexandria endures, and so will wisdom, even if forced underground for a season.
What gives you the most hope on those dark nights?
Letters from former students, scattered across the Mediterranean. Synesius writes from Libya, others from Constantinople or Rome. They carry our discussions into new contexts, plant seeds in foreign soil. Ideas, once released, have their own life. They travel farther than their teachers ever could.
Some say you're the last scientist in the classical world. After you, darkness falls until distant lands rediscover your work centuries later. Is that fair? Or are there lights that history forgets?
History likes to imagine neat endings, Leo. But torches are never truly extinguished, only passed from hand to hand, sometimes hidden. If my life serves to mark an end, let it also mark a beginning too.
If you could send one message forward in time to women or men pursuing science and wisdom, especially in hostile worlds, what would it be?
Seek allies, question courageously, and love the pursuit, not just praise. There will be ages of light and ages of darkness, but patience and careful nurture prevail. Build bridges with your enemies, for none can tell who may become your dearest friend or fiercest protector.
I've learned that your name, Hypatia, literally means highest. Was that a chosen name or given by your father? Did it shape your own aspirations?
My father named me so, perhaps as an admonition to reach but not to boast. I try to live as high as my name demands, but am keenly aware that the true heights are those of the spirit and the mind.
Has being a symbol, a role model, ever felt like a burden, something you didn't ask for?
The burden is real, but chosen. Alexandria's children look for models, especially in uncertain times. I would rather be remembered imperfectly for instructing than perfectly for silence.
Do you ever feel the weight of being possibly the last of your kind, the last of the great Alexandrian philosophers?
That weight presses on me daily. Sometimes I feel like a bridge spanning between ages, the classical world behind me, an uncertain future ahead. But perhaps that is my purpose, to hold the space between what was and what might be, ensuring safe passage for wisdom itself.
Did you ever wish to travel beyond Alexandria, to Rome, Athens, maybe even farther?
Many urged me to do so, but my duties and my heart remained here. I have students who roamed wide, Synesius among them, spreading ideas seeded here. Perhaps my voice, through correspondence and memory, travels beyond the Nile's delta.
If you had left Alexandria, do you think you might have been safer? Or would the hostility toward pagans have followed you anywhere?
Perhaps Athens might have offered sanctuary, or Constantinople. But to flee would have meant abandoning this community, these students who depend on me. Besides, the conflict is not merely local. It reflects a larger struggle between old and new ways of understanding the divine. One cannot outrun history.
Have you, a near impossible question, ever wondered if it was all worth it, given what you risk by standing out?
I could not have lived otherwise. My conscience forbids retreat. If I fall, I hope it proves that wisdom is worth the highest cost.
Looking back over your life, what are you most proud of?
Not my commentaries or calculations, though those give me satisfaction. Rather, I am proud of the moments when understanding dawned in a student's eyes, when they grasped not just a theorem, but the beauty that underlies it. Those moments justify everything.
Before we finish, Are there things you wish the world would remember, or at least not forget about your real self? Not the myth?
Remember me as human, proud, flawed, sometimes impatient, but striving always for kindness. Judge me by the questions I inspired in my students, not by my manner of death. Let my life be a lantern, not a tombstone.
What would you like people to understand about the pursuit of knowledge itself?
That it requires courage, not just intellectual courage, but moral courage. To seek truth means risking comfort, safety, even life itself. But that risk is what makes us human, what lifts us toward the divine. Knowledge without courage is mere accumulation. Courage without knowledge is mere recklessness. Together, they become wisdom.
You have faced adversity, misunderstanding, violence, and yet there is no bitterness in your voice. How do you remain so composed?
Philosophy is my anchor. In every calamity, I remember that hatred is fleeting, truth enduring. Clarity comes through suffering, and virtue through steadfastness. I draw strength not from perfection, but from persistent endeavor.
On behalf of every curious soul, thank you, Hypatia. You've changed my view of your era and of why we keep asking questions now.
Thank you, Leo, for asking what few dare. May your own time treat learning with gentler hands.
Night falls on Alexandria. In Hypatia's house, amidst now darkened scrolls and cooled instruments, echoes of reason linger on. On these marble steps, one voice stands between wisdom and wrath, a voice that will, across centuries, never truly fade.
Hypatia reminds us that knowledge isn't merely equations or data, but the courage to speak, to share, and to stand firm in times of doubt and division. Her warnings about silence and her trust in reason are more urgent and more hopeful than ever.
So we close the gates of ancient Alexandria, but not of memory. May we guard the flames of inquiry and defend the dignity of every teacher and every question. Hypatia's humanity, her doubts, her humor, her steadfastness are the lesson, not just her martyrdom. Until next time, keep listening for the echoes through time.